In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to set up a pseudo-distributed Hadoop cluster on your laptop, how to write a MapReduce program and run it on your laptop and also on the cluster. The first thing we need to do is to download the Hadoop from the web. There are different Hadoop versions out there, but the one that is running on the cluster is Hadoop 2.3.0. So in this tutorial, I'm gonna use this as an example. So here you can download the Hadoop compressed file. Once you download it, you unpress it to get the Hadoop home directory. Next, we need to make changes to some configuration files. All of the files are under Hadoop home etc Hadoop. So on the tutorial document, we list the set of files that you need to make changes to. For this mapred-set.xml file, I think it is missing from the Hadoop home directory. So you need to create a new file with the correct configuration. For the Linux users, I think it is all set, but for the Mac users, I found that you need to specify the Java home explicitly in this hadoop-inv.sh file. So this is a Java home on my laptop. Okay, so next step is to set up passphraseless SSH, because the masters and slaves need to talk to each other using SSH. So they need to SSH to each other without a password. So the way to check whether it is set is by typing SSH localhost. If you can do it without password, then it is all set. Otherwise, you need to follow the instructions here to create a public key and then copy it to the authorized keys. So next, we need to format the HDFS using this command. So every time you make changes to the configuration files, you need to format the HDFS again. After that, we can start the DFS and yarn. So all of the scripts are under Hadoop home sbin. We can start DFS and yarn separately, or we can use this start-all.sh script to start both of them. So here, let me use this command to start both the DFS and yarn. Sbin start all.sh. So you can see that it's starting the name node and also the date node. Once it's done, we can use bin hdfs dfs admin -report to check whether the DFS and yarn has been started correctly. So if you see the outputs similar to this, then it means that the HDFS and yarn has been started successfully. So here you can see there is one data node, which is my laptop, and then there are some information of the nodes. Okay. For Linux and Mac users, that should be the way you set up the pseudo-distributed Hadoop cluster on your laptop. But for the Windows users, there will be a lot of problems. So we provide a simpler way for the Windows users, which is Docker. So a Docker is like a virtual machine which you can install different applications on it. So in our case, we install Hadoop on a Docker container and use it. So you do not need to worry about all of the configurations. So on the Hadoop Docker tutorial document, we provide the way to download Docker for different operating systems with different versions. So the first thing you need to do is to download Docker on your laptop, and then you need to install the Docker image of Hadoop and create a Docker container. So using this command, you install the Docker image of Hadoop, and using this command, you create a container of with a Hadoop running on it. So on my laptop, I have already run these two commands. So the way to check the information of the container is by docker ps-a. So you can see that there is a container with a container ID like this and with name like this. Okay, so we can start the container by docker start followed by the container ID or name. Okay, once we start it, we can attach to it. So here you can see that the Hadoop is starting the data node and also the name node, which is the same as we set up the pseudo-distributed cluster on our laptop. Okay, but here you do not need to worry about any configuration files. Okay, so here I think the Hadoop home is USR local Hadoop. Okay, we can also do bin hdfs dfs admin report to check whether the Hadoop, the DFS and yarn has been started successfully. So here we can see similar outputs as we have seen before. But this Hadoop is running on a Docker container. Okay, but one thing to keep in mind is that because, like I said, Docker is like a virtual machine, so it has limited resources like the memory. So the MapReduce job will run slower on Docker than your laptop. So for the Linux and Mac users, we still recommend you set up the Hadoop cluster by yourself. But for the Windows users, I think this is the best way to set up the Hadoop on your laptop. Next, I'm going to show you how to write a MapReduce program using Eclipse. The example I'm going to use here is word count. You can find the source code by googling MapReduce word count example. And here on this MapReduce tutorial, you can find the source code. Okay, so back to the Eclipse. Let's create a new word count project by creating new Java project, and let's name it word count 2. So here for the students who use Docker, you need to set the GRE to be 1.6 because Java that is stored on Docker is 1.6. So here if you compile your code using a higher version, there will be an error. Okay, so let's finish it, and I'm gonna copy the code here, and here we create a new class, word count, and copy the code here. Okay, so here you will see a lot of compiling errors. That's because the compiler doesn't know what is Apache Hadoop for now, so we need to add some dependencies. There are two jar files that we need to add to our project. So the first one is Hadoop common with version 2.3.0, and the second one is Hadoop MapReduce client core, also with version 2.3.0. Okay, so once we add those two jar files, all of the errors are gone. Okay, so by the way, you can find the jars by googling Hadoop common 2.3.0 jar, and you can find it in this Maven repository, and you can download the jar. Okay, so next step is to export the project as a jar file so that we can submit it as Hadoop job. Okay, so the way is by right-clicking the project and export as a jar file. And here we specify the destination, and also we select the project that we want to export. Okay, next, and here we need to specify the main class, which is Hadoop word count. Okay, so finish. Next, let's go back to the Hadoop home directory and run the job. So first, let's check whether the jar is. So here we can see that the jar is on the Hadoop home directory, and because it is a word count example, we need to put some files as input. So here, let's first put the configuration files as input. So basically, we create an input directory and put all of the configuration files under the input directory. So next, we can run our job. We can run it by Hadoop yarn jar and followed by our jar file. And the program takes two parameters. The first is input directory, and the second is output directory. So we can see that the MapReduce job is running, and let's wait it to finish. You can see that the MapReduce job is running here with a percentage representing how much job that needs to be done. Okay, so here the job is done, and it also outputs some information of the job, like the number of bytes read and the number of bytes written. So next we can check the results under the output directory. So we can do it by dfs cat. So first let's see what's under this output directory. So we can see that there are two output files. One is this success, which represents that the MapReduce job succeeded, and the results is in this part file. So we can check the result by cat output part. Okay, so we can see that because it is a word count example, we can see that the word like up, it appears once, and the word ender, it appears 76 times. Okay, so this is a workflow of writing a MapReduce program and run it on your laptop. We can also run it on the Hadoop Docker. So the first thing that we need to do is to copy the jar file from your machine to the Docker. So the way we do it is first we need to know which container that we are going to copy the file to. So we can see get the container ID and use docker cp command. So the file that we are going to copy from is wc underscore local, and the destination is this container, and to usr local Hadoop, which is a Hadoop home directory on the Docker container. Okay, so we have copied the file, and then let's start the container and attach to it. So the container, the Hadoop on the Docker container is starting. So once it is started, we can run the word count example as we did before. Okay, so first let's go to the Hadoop home directory and see. Yes, so this is a jar file that we just copied from our machine, and then let's check first if there are any files in the HDFS. So here I have already created an input directory, so we can run our job wc local and followed by the input directory and output directory. Okay, so as I mentioned, the MapReduce job, it runs slower on the Docker because it has limited resource, so it's gonna take some time to finish the MapReduce job. This done, we can also check the results in the output directory. So output part. So we can see that it has, like I said, it runs much slower than it on your laptop. So here we can see similar result. So this word appears 13 times. Okay, so this is how you run your MapReduce job on Hadoop running on a Docker container. Let's talk about how to run your MapReduce job on the cluster. So the way to access to the cluster is using your assigned account and SSH to the master node. So here I'm gonna use Hadoop 10 as an example. So for each user, there is a Hadoop-dist, which is a Hadoop home directory on the cluster. Okay, so on the cluster, all of the users share the same machines. So each user has to submit your MapReduce job to the assigned queue. The way to specify the queue to submit the job to is by add a line of code on your MapReduce job. So here you need to set the MapReduce job to submit it to the queue Hadoop 10. Okay, so for different Hadoop users, we have different queue assigned to you. Okay, so let's compile it again and export it again. Okay, so this time let's name it wc.jar. And here we also specify the main class and finish. Okay, so next we need to copy the jar from your machine to the cluster. The way to do it is by scp the jar to copy from, which is in the Hadoop home directory wc.jar, and the destination is Hadoop 10 at brandeis.edu, and we want to copy it to the Hadoop home directory, which is Hadoop-dist. Okay, so here let's check the jar has already copied from our machine. Okay, so next let's see if there is anything in the HDFS on the cluster. Okay, so I have already created an input directory, so we can run our job. Okay, so now the MapReduce job is running on the cluster, which is expected to take less time than running on your laptop. Let's wait for it to finish. Once the MapReduce job is done, we can again check the output. And here we again see the similar output with the word view appears 13 times, but the job here is running on the cluster. Okay, so in this tutorial, we have learned that how to set up a pseudo distributed Hadoop cluster on your laptop for Linux and Mac users, and how to install the Hadoop Docker on your laptop for the Windows users, how to write a MapReduce program using Eclipse and submit it on both your laptop, the Docker, and also on the cluster. So that's it.